Stretching along India's stunning western coastline, NH66 is one of the country's most scenic and vital highways.
In 50 meters, at the roundabout, take the third exit.
Hey everyone, I hope you guys are doing well. What you see ahead of me is NH66, and we are driving from Mangaluru to Kochi to find out if it truly is a construction war zone. I'll be sharing updates every 50 kilometers starting from KPT Junction in Mangaluru. First planned stop, Kannur, 140 kilometers away with an estimated drive time of 3.5 hours. NH66 in Karnataka is as beautiful as it gets. And while ongoing improvements are always welcome, it never fails to impress. In about 17 kilometers, we reached the final toll gate on NH66 in Karnataka. A few kilometers ahead is the Karnataka Kerala border and the point where the true transformation of NH66 begins. First impressions? Very good. In fact, remarkably good. If this is a glimpse of what NH66 will look like once the construction is complete, then I'm genuinely impressed. A smooth 6-lane highway built for cruising speeds of 100 to 120 kilometers per hour. Not bad at all. The final touches are being laid on this stretch, and in a few sections, the road is still shared with oncoming traffic. But no complaints. The flow is smooth. I also noticed signs prohibiting two-wheelers and three-wheelers. Clearly, they're serious about turning this into a proper mile-munching highway. The first diversion appears at the 46-kilometer mark, just before Kasargod. So far, the average speed stands at 69 kilometers per hour. Let's take a quick look at fuel economy, because we are unlikely to see these numbers again for the rest of this drive. 19.8 kilometers per liter. If I even manage 16 by the time we reach Kochi, I'll consider that a win. The service road here is in good condition, so the diversion isn't much of a hassle. The main highway looks nearly complete and should be operational soon. Overall, the first 50 kilometers have been smooth. Once construction is fully wrapped up, reaching Kochi in under 6 hours will be entirely possible. So the first 50 kilometers comes up. We've reached Kasaragod. Let's see what the next 50 kilometers has in store for us. We are still on the service road, continuing our drive towards Kannur. You'll come across quite a few underpasses like these in the initial leg of the journey, some without any speed breakers leading into them. It's best to slow down when there's no traffic around. You never know what might suddenly pop out. Around 60 kilometers into the drive, a sharp right, and we encounter the first major construction-torn zone on this highway.
Turn right.
A little further ahead, heavy machineries line the front line, active, imposing. Hard to tell what exactly they're working on, but it's clear we've entered the thick of it. Oh, there it is. So that's what they were staring at. NH66, the original, in all its raw, unfiltered glory. For the first time on this drive, we've encountered the highway in its old form. Beautiful, almost serpentine curves hugging the Kerala coastline. The NHAI is going to have a difficult time trying to tame these bends. I've always had a soft spot for these old style bridges whenever I've driven this stretch. And I have to admit, I still do. It took nearly 14 kilometers before we found a stretch of well paved road that lasted for more than a kilometer. But it was not long before we hit another diversion. From here on, the road conditions vary between paved section, diversions, and the occasional stretch of the old highway. It's manageable to say the least. Traffic can be an issue, and slow pace is inevitable, especially if you find yourself stuck behind a sluggish vehicle on the service road. Expect traffic whenever you pass through a major town or city. The highway still uses the old route running directly through these areas instead of bypassing them. By the time we crossed the 100-kilometer mark, we were passing through Nileshwar. From here, it's another 50 kilometers to Kannur, a drive that will take roughly an hour and a half. To sum up the last 50 kilometers, the entire stretch is still under construction, and you will spend at least half the time on service roads or the old highway. The next 50 kilometers begin on a positive note. At least the first 20 does. There are some completed stretches where we were able to maintain steady pace. That's not to say diversions are absent. They're still there, but they're in decent shape, and you rarely have to come to a complete stop when you hit them. Within these 20 kilometers, we also passed through Payanur, and surprisingly, without much hassle. The bypass stretches still appear far from completion, but once they are done, they'll significantly cut down the drive time through these congested areas. Looking at the sheer magnitude of work still left, one can only imagine how long it will take before this highway is truly complete. One thing is certain, the charm that the old NH66 had, it will be diluted, if not lost entirely. Take this untouched stretch of the old highway, for instance. There's no highway hypnosis here, that's for sure. But I know I'm being a bit impractical. This arterial route of the Indian highway network is long past its capacity, and expansion is urgently needed. Still, I hope they preserve at least some of these old bridges. Maybe keep them on one side. Just look at the new one next to it. It may be stronger and more efficient, but it lacks the character of the original. And finally, we reach Kannur, completing 150 kilometers of this journey. The 100 to 150 kilometer stretch, which took about an hour and 15 minutes, was a mixed bag. The initial stretches offer good roads, but most major towns are still crossed via the old highway, where traffic becomes a real concern. Now it's time for the next 50. So far, we've managed an average of 16.6 kilometers per liter. And Kannur looked ready to test our patience. With the bypass still incomplete, we had to go right through the city, and traffic was at its peak. I was hungry, and I couldn't ignore the air dancer calling me in for a meal. In general, there's good availability of restaurants at all major stops along this highway. So, this is the air dancer that persuaded me to stop. The food here is good, definitely worth a try, but the restrooms, unfortunately, are in poor shape. In any case, it's time to get back on the road and continue our journey towards Kochi. 3 hours for just 89 kilometers? Google Maps must be high on coconut water. That works out to an average speed of barely 30 kilometers per hour. For context, we are currently at 43, despite the traffic and constant construction diversions. Well, there's only one way to find out. We drive ahead. Yes, we are definitely winning this round. Nearly 15 kilometers covered in about 25 minutes, and we are now approaching Thalassery. Our confidence soared even higher as we entered Mahi, where construction is complete. They are quick to collect tolls too. And with roads like these, there's no way 30 kilometers per hour could be the average speed. But Google Maps remained firm, still insisting that the next 64 kilometers to Kozhikode would take 2.5 hours. Hard to say what's that all about. We were just glad to be closing in on the 200 kilometer mark, thinking that the last 50 would be something positive to report. But just a few kilometers past Mahi came a diversion, one that would change everything about this drive. It felt like coming to a complete halt after cruising on an open 6-lane highway. Traffic had built up significantly and the roads looked worn, likely damaged by the recent rains. We inched forward and eventually crossed the 200 kilometer mark, reaching Vadakara. It took us 30 minutes to cover the last 10 kilometers. So, between the 150 to 200 kilometer mark, we started off strong and ended, well, like this. Join me in the next episode as we head straight into the construction battlefield of Vadakara. The remaining 250 kilometers aren't going to be easy, not by the look of it. Well, the roads may be broken, but the story isn't. I'll see you in the next stretch. A flooded stretch of road. Beautiful. Please tell me you're joking. What on earth was going on here?